So organizations are facing one of the biggest challenges.
Hi, Kira Lescu of the Eagle Institute. Today's video is going to be quite a bit different from some of the other videos I've done. In the past, I've done really short videos that are specific to topics that you can just get like a little bite and maybe one or two ideas to move something forward. But this video is going to be quite a bit longer. I'm not actually sure at this time. It could be as long as 30 minutes. And the reason why I'm doing that is that there's a topic that I keep having to deal with in my own business and career and life. And I see many people struggling with this and resisting it and not wanting to do it. And I think it's a societal perception that really needs to change. And that is our ability to let go and to have rest periods or non-activity periods. And I'm going to use a word, surrender, to be able to let go of control all the time. And surrender has a really bad rap as a term. And even if you look it up, surrender most often says that you are losing and you're giving up. And that, in this case, is not what I mean. In this case, I mean that we are giving up the trying and the striving, and at times we are taking a retreat so that we can reevaluate, review, renew, regenerate, regrow, rethink, re-strategize. And if you know anything about quality systems in business or performance in sport, that is where the magic happens. You have to act and you stop and you look at what happened, you take a break, and then you renew, you review, and then you start again. And that's where the power and that's where the magic happens. Otherwise, you're just doing the same old. And most of the time, there's no improvement that can happen there. But there's a bigger issue here, and that is that in order to master where we're going in this world with the massive structural changes that we're dealing with on every level. We're dealing with changes in the way we view our work, in our economic changes, possibly monetary changes, political changes, product changes, lifestyle changes, you name it. Everything is up right now. Education system, schools, governments, all of it is up for change. And if you don't have the space and the time to sit and be calm and evaluate and think about what's happened before, what's happening now, and the potential of what can happen in the future and how it can be better. If you don't have the space to deal with that in your time, in terms of mental energy, in terms of emotional energy, you're going to have a really hard time over the next, for sure, 3 to 5 years, maybe even a lot longer than that. The most important thing that we need today as leaders is our capacity to have that space. And in order to have that space, we need to be able to let go. We need to be able to let go of things in our schedule to create that space. And we need to practice letting go of things that aren't working anymore in order to allow space for new things that are going to be even better. And on an intuitive level, I mean, a lot of us do this quite naturally. Although sometimes we might get frustrated with it. New phones sell, new computers sell. I mean, we love new technology, but when we do that, we have to let go of the old technology. And often for some people, it's very easy because they're eager, they want the change. They understand, they're very intuitive, and they've been kind of wishing for some of the changes that were happening. And then there's other people that, their technology maybe isn't starting to work as well anymore. So in order to get it to do what they want to do, they somewhat resistantly go and get it changed. And then there's those people, and my parents are some of these, they had to get rid of the old dial phone at the cottage because the telephone company just said, no, we're not going to let you do that anymore. And honestly, they didn't want to change. They liked their old phone. It was part of the image of the cottage. But you know what? It had to go. It had to go. It was no longer functioning in the way that we use things in our society. And the rate of change and the way change is happening right now, it's like a big river of water. And you can swim upstream and you can probably hold your pace. And if the water's not moving too fast, you might be able to move upstream. Eventually, that stream, you will get too tired and the stream is going to start taking you the other way. Or the strength of the stream is going to grow power, and even if you have a lot of energy, you are not going to be able to go. It's going to turn into a river, and it's going to drag you where it's going to go. Being a former long distance and open water swimmer, one of the most dangerous places you can be in is if you're swimming one way and the water's going the other way, because you cannot see what's coming. And you have no ability to guide yourself and to find the best path. The other thing that happens is you exhaust yourself. There are times in life where we do have to swim upstream, but if that's a long-term thing, you will end up exhausted. You might have much better chances of doing well, of going with adapting to things and being able to guide and change where you want to go if you're going with the water, if you're going downstream. So and when I used to do open water racing, when we were going downstream, we can see there might be some currents, there might be, some little rapids, possibly even some waterfalls that need to be avoided. And if you're going downstream, you can guide yourself. You can guide yourself around the rocks. And it doesn't take that much effort. I actually kind of liked river swimming because you actually, when you're going downstream, you get to go so much faster and it doesn't take that much energy. But when you have to turn and go the other way, it's a lot more dangerous for the most part. And you can get caught in some really difficult things that you just cannot get out of. The water sucks you under and you don't have a lot of choice. But when you turn and you go downstream, most of the time you can find a path that, at least if it's not completely calm, that it's a lot less rough. So keep that in mind. But the only way you can do that is if you let go and stop paddling. Stop doing all those things that are taking you upstream. And that concept of letting go goes back to what I was talking earlier about surrender. So in order to be able to navigate that river, in order that is taking us forward into places that we've never been before in society, in business, you got to be able to have your head up. You need to be able to have the energy and be able to take pauses and to evaluate where you are in your surroundings. And the only way you can do that is if you have space. And as these changes happen to us, another concept that's really important about letting go is that things are going to change. The way we work with different people needs to change. And all of us are going to be asked to change and grow mentally and emotionally, physically, in many different ways on many different levels. And when we practice this letting go, we're building that muscle. It's a muscle that gets stronger. And it will help you as we have to navigate some of these different changes. You'll start to realize, oh, this thing in my life, in my business wasn't working anymore. I had a person that was working for me that was amazing in the role. They've changed, the role's changed, but I have them there because it's habit. And honestly, maybe I like that person, or I'm afraid of saying something for whatever reason. It's not working anymore. but you keep it. And maybe that's you. Maybe you're in a position or in a business or have customers or in a product line or a service line that it doesn't have long-term potential, but you don't want to let it go. Maybe it's really hard to let go. Maybe it's a cash cow right now. And the thought of letting that go is like, oh, I don't want to deal with it. Or maybe someone else will have to deal with it. The people that really thrive over the next few years are the ones that are going to be able to, first of all, recognize when that's happening. And they'll be able to recognize that by creating space where they can evaluate things. And then being wise and compassionate, using your mind and your heart as you make those changes. And you know what? Some of those changes are just going to be like, oh, why didn't I do this like a year ago, last month, 6 years ago? And some of those other changes are going to feel like a loss. They're going to be a big loss, and they may need to be grieved. And there are, different stages of grief that you have to go through. And I've done a lot of letting go in my life. Some of the changes I wanted to make, and some of them I just knew I had to make. And I'm going to tell you about that on here. And I went through all the stages of grief. And you know what? It kind of sucked. It wasn't that great. I mean, no one really wants to feel some of those emotions. But even as I was going through it, I knew that by clearing some of those things out, it was making my life better. I had the potential to make it better. So as a leader, what are some of the things that you need to cut? What are the things in your schedule that aren't adding value, that are taking up your time? What are the people in the relationships that need to have something said or that just need to go? What are the things that you've outgrown that you're hanging on to because they're comfortable and familiar? What are the things where you're feeling that it's stagnant, that it's not moving? Maybe you're bored. Those are all the places to start to look. And then also look at what's going on around you. Look in the business. Look at your customers. Look at the marketplace. Start paying attention. What are the things that need to change? What are the things that are in their letting go phase of their own life? This is a really good time for me to talk about the phases of life. And for those of you that live where there's 4 seasons, this will be really understandable. First of all, we have birth and spring. Stuff is all new, it's shiny, it's just starting to grow. Or, if we have new projects or new things in our life, we're usually pretty excited about it. Don't know too many people that aren't excited about spring unless you're like an amazing skier and that's all you like to do. From that, we go into summer. Things start to grow, they start to develop. We nurture them, they're growing. And then we have fall. Fall is this beautiful time, autumn, where we harvest things. And a lot of us, we would like to go from autumn straight back over to spring again. But we have this beautiful season in between that's called winter. And what happens in winter? It's quiet. We don't do a lot. We stay inside. We don't have as much sunlight. The weather is colder, so we just find that we're doing less. Our bodies slow down. Our biorhythm is geared towards that. I mean, of course, in our modern societies, we can overcome this. We have lights, we have heat, we have all these things that make it so that we don't have that drastic a change that we have at other parts in our history. And it's a real shame we don't understand the value of winter. Because winter can be such a gift. If we went straight and think about natural systems, like if you had a forest that went straight from fall right back to spring, there's all that time where the soil gets replenished, the soil gets to rest. The trees get to rest. The animals get to rest. Everything rests so that it could come back to spring and be active again. And when we miss that rest phase, that letting go phase, we actually don't have the energy to come back in the spring. We need that phase in order to be at our highest performing levels and in order to understand what those things are that belong in our life. So the things in our lives have seasons too. Some things, I have a friend that says, people come into our life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And sometimes we try to hold on to things that just need to go. And that's not just people. That can be jobs, it can be hobbies, it can be activities, it can be where we live, it can be mental habits we have, belief systems we have. I mean, this applies on every single level of your life. So, we're in a winter season right now. We're reevaluating and changing, and we're starting to come into, a spring season over the next few years. But right now, we still have some winter to go. We still have some systems to break down. We still have, ideas that are generating and coming through. But in order for the new ideas and the new ways of being to really germinate and grow, the old stuff needs to be cleared away first to make space. And the river's flowing. It's taking us there. We need to make space to make sure that we have time and mental energy and the emotional capacity to handle the changes that are happening and to guide them to the best of our ability. And this isn't to say that things are going to happen to you that are out of your control. They may. They've happened to many people around the world that didn't expect them. But we always have choice within that, even when things happen to us, as to how we're going to handle it. And if you don't have that space, then you're reacting rather than taking stock and being mindful about what's happening and being real and being honest with yourself and evaluating, where do I go from here? You need that space. So I'm going to tell you a story on a personal level of a lot of choices that I needed to make to let go of things that were no longer working in my life. And the first one, this involves the same person because I was married to my business partner. We co-founded a company together and it was very successful. It did very, very well, and it was a ton of fun because both of us were doing things where we were relatively experienced and good at it, and we had magic together. Between the two of us, we covered every area of the business and that we were both good at, and there wasn't a lot of overlap. So we weren't really, we were each in our strong suit and, making joint decisions and going forward together. And we were also married. But our marriage was more of a business partnership than a marriage. And we got along fantastically well at growing the business, but there really wasn't anything outside of that. And I had come to recognize this. And I was driving one day, and it was spring, and I had the top down on my car. I just bought a brand new convertible, and I realized that here I was in this amazing new car. We should have been together, enjoying it together, and here I was alone. And I was doing something myself because he didn't want to do what I wanted to do. And then mentally, I just let go. I said, let this be. I want an amazing relationship and an amazing marriage. And I would really like for it to be with him. But if it can't be, I'm willing to let it go. Because I want to be driving in this beautiful weather, going to a fun event with someone who wants to be with me. Not someone who has other priorities. And I let that go. And I really thought that by letting it go, that was going to solve and fix some of the problems, and that we would come closer together and our marriage would be even better than it ever was. And it would be everything that I had dreamed it could be. Fast forward 8 months later, we were away on vacation at New Year's, and he spent the whole time working. And here we were in this amazing resort in this beautiful country in this beautiful weather, and I was still doing everything by myself and watching him work. And it really hit me that if we stay together, this is going to be my life. I will come to beautiful places by myself, and I will be single. I will be married, but I will be single, and this is the way it's going to be. And I was frightened to say something because the business was going so well, and I was doing things in my life that I had never done before and that I loved, and I was thriving and just enjoying it on every level. And I had to decide, am I going to be stagnant in this area of my life, or am I going to risk it? Am I going to trust that I can come out of this well? Am I going to trust that I can let go of something in my life that isn't working and come through the other side? And I told him that while we were there. And about 6 weeks later, I said, for sure, I'm leaving. I want a divorce. This is done. I don't see any way for us to work through this. And the first thing he said to me was, oh, you won't leave me in the business, will you? And I was like, thank goodness I get to keep my business. But I had already decided before we had that discussion that if it cost me the business, I was going to let it go. Because I was being held back in my life, in who I was capable of being, and everything that I was capable of doing if I stayed. And we did run the business together successfully for a few years after that. We managed the divorce, we grew the company while we were doing it, and not a lot of people knew because we kept it quiet and we handled it really well. Even our employees didn't know. I mean, they knew we were both kind of upset probably, but they didn't know that we're no longer living in the same place and that we were active, we're working with lawyers and getting the divorce done. Then it became apparent that we didn't have the same vision and the same future and the same direction in the business either. And again, I had to make a decision. Was I going to stay and be somewhat satisfied and live a 70% life that was going to slide backwards, 68, 65, 63, 60, and let my life slide backwards? Or even though I was terrified, even though I was scared, even though it was difficult and heartbreaking to walk away, was I going to be brave and do it? And I chose to do it. And from the outside looking in, a lot of people, made comments to me. They thought I was crazy. They didn't understand what I was doing. In my heart, I knew it was the right thing to do. In my heart, I knew that I could be more and I would be more if I went on my own. And that was a really challenging decision to make. I mean, the decision was easy to make. Going through and actually doing it, and going through the grief of the loss, going through all the stages of grief, going through the pain of not knowing what was going to come next, and the uncertainty and at times even fear of, what have I done? Can I handle this? Am I capable of this? And the answer was yes. It wasn't easy. There were many days where I had a fairy godmother to give me my old life and my old business back. I probably would have done it. Today, I am so thankful that I stayed on that journey. From the outside looking in, I haven't done much since I left. I've tried a bunch of different things and they all didn't work until the one that I'm working on now. But it's even not going at the pace that I thought it would, or that it would be as fast and as easy as I thought it would be. But let me tell you, the growth that I've done on the inside, and the challenges that I've overcome, and the strength that I've built in things that I absolutely could not even fathom being capable of, that I now consider proficient at, and that I consider a strength. And none of that would have happened or would have been possible had I stayed in my old company. I would have stayed in this little comfort zone, and I wouldn't have built any new skills or any new muscles. And that has been one of the greatest gifts to me, and it's going to serve me very, very well as I go forward. But the only reason why I got that was because I was willing to let go. And I was willing to be in a place where I didn't have the answers, and I didn't know what was going to be next. Because quite frankly, you can't sell a business and run a business and plan all at the same time. And I didn't have the luxury of doing a plan first, and quite frankly, I'm so glad I didn't. Because if I had done a plan back then, before I had the clarity and the space that I had after I sold it, I would have been unhappy. And I would have just ended up trashing whatever I was doing and not going through the growth that I was capable of. And I would not be sitting here right now teaching all these things that I have to teach, which I have always loved teaching. Going through this process has forced me to be clear about the things that are important to me, the things that I want to do, the things that I love doing, and the gifts that I have to give to the world. And I did a list over a year ago, a forced ranking list of your passions. There's a book and a website called The Passion Test by the Atwoods. Interestingly enough, they used to be married and they wrote a book together. And for anyone who's struggling what's next in your life, I highly recommend that book. But what work I'm doing now is my top 5 passions all in one place. And before, I had to go and do them all in all different places, and I never felt like I could integrate all these things that I loved into my life. I had to get a little snippet here and a little snippet there, and it wasn't fulfilling. I couldn't have gotten to this place if I hadn't let go and I hadn't created space. And yes, I did have to go through the grieving process. And yes, I did have to go through a lot of difficulty in growing. For those of you that are athletes, you'll understand this really well. If you want to get in shape, and just imagine doing weights. I've done a lot of weight training in my life, so I love that as an example. You don't get in shape in the gym by going and doing the weight you've already done or the exercise you've already done. You either use your muscles in a different way that you haven't used them before, or you do a heavier weight. You push the parameters, you push the limits of where you've gone. And when you push those limits, that's where you get stronger. But even in training, you still need space. You need rest. You work and then you rest. That's how you get stronger. If you work all the time, guess what happens? You get sick, you get injured. Your body says, time out, we're having a rest. See, this applies everywhere. Like, there's example after example. So I feel so fortunate that even though I was afraid, even though it was difficult, even though it was uncertain, even though I was grieving the loss, that I did that, I took that journey, and I created this space in my life. Because now I have people in my life that I didn't have before that are at a completely different level. I have access to learning at a completely different level. I've pushed myself in skills where I never dreamed possible. And from there, now I can see a whole new level. there's this whole new view in my life that I didn't have before. Like, I kind of suspected it was there, but I'm actually on the path now to doing those things. And before, I was just like, oh yeah, maybe, other people can do those things. Now I'm on that path and I'm doing it. So letting go is not always easy, but it is essential, it is worthwhile, and it is a part of life. And business is a part of life. So those of us that can really master being excellent at leadership in business and in all the other leadership functions that we have in our society, we need to come to terms with that, creating space, knowing when to be active, knowing when to be inactive. That's really what surrender is knowing when to be inactive and to wait until it's time to have that activity period again. I think the biggest challenge that people have, and I know that I had, was that if we let go of what's here, that nothing is going to happen, or that whatever comes in is not going to be as good as it was before, or that we're going to be stuck. If you think that that's you, go and look at nature. Nature cannot stand a vacuum. Nature grows. It grows all the time, anywhere, in the most difficult places. When a natural disaster strikes, yes, we lose all the old growth, whether they're old big trees or bushes or whatever. But then what happens? We have tiny new little seeds that come up almost right away. If you've ever seen something where a fire's gone through or where there's been a flood, things get cleared away. Sometimes it's days, it's weeks, and life starts again. If you want to know how hardy life is, look on a freeway next time you're driving that isn't highly maintained. There's like grass peeking out and weeds peeking out. Life is so resilient, and you're part of that. You are too. You are that resilience. And you may be challenged to get stronger, but you will do it. You will be stronger if you let yourself. And this can happen one of two ways. You can resist the change, you can resist doing this, and you can get thrown out and be pushed out. And then it's going to be really challenging because you won't have the skills. Or you can start now and be proactive and start building the skills. Start giving yourself space and letting go in your life. Letting go of subscriptions you don't need. Letting go of spending time on things that are time wasters. Letting go of relationships that really aren't enriching your life. Letting go of the way you think of yourself. Letting go of belief systems that you've outgrown. Letting go of thinking this is the way this has to be or it should be. Letting go of thinking that the way it was done in the past is the only way or it has to be that way. You will be amazed at where you can go and what you can handle and what can happen if you make those changes. I can say from my own life that it hasn't always been easy, but it has been a magnificent journey. And I'm so thankful for letting go of things when they needed to go. And I'm so thankful for the new things that have come into my life and that are still coming. Quite frankly, it's a work in progress. I'm not all the way there yet, but I have the chance to do it and to be it where I didn't before. So let yourself grow. Let yourself make that space. Let it happen. And don't forget that letting go and surrender and clearing things out is part of business. It's part of life. It's natural. Let it happen. So if you want to learn more about this, please check out my website for developing skills in mindfulness and action for business professionals at theeagleinstitute.com. The link is in the cards for this video and in the notes below, so make sure you check it out. But when you turn and you go downstream, most of the time you can find a path that, at least if it's not completely calm, that it's a lot less rough. So keep that in mind. But the only way you can do that is if you let go and stop paddling. Stop doing all those things that are taking you upstream. And that concept of letting go goes back to what I was talking earlier about surrender. So in order to be able to navigate that river, you got to be able to have your head up. You need to be able to have the energy and be able to take pauses and to evaluate where you are in your surroundings. And the only way you can do that is if you have space.